Hello, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you. It's really an honor. And I'd like to share some thoughts with you on artificial intelligence and the new creative paradigm. And I'd like to begin by mentioning a quote which is credited to Michelangelo that every block of stone has a statue inside it, and it is the task of the sculptor to discover it. What he was referring to was the innate human ability of being creative, of imagining things that don't exist, and seeing beauty where also beautiful beauty doesn't necessarily exist. And it's also one of the reasons why we come to admire different composers such as Bob Dylan, McCartney, Nina Simone, or Carole King for their capacity of imagining harmonies and melodies and lyrics where in theory doesn't exist. But what exactly is creativity? As you can imagine, creativity is one of those concepts with multiple definitions. But one which is widely accepted is from Margaret Bowden, that she says that creativity is the ability to come up with ideas or artifacts that are new, surprising, and valuable. So the novelty aspect of creativity, coming up with something which is somehow new, is very important. But that means new in two different ways. We have psychological novelty, which is when something is new to us, but not exactly to others, and historical novelty, when something is truly groundbreaking, which in the case of music is a little bit more complex. But how do we understand creativity, the process of creativity? Well, there's three main modes which we look at. The first one is called combinational creativity, which is unfamiliar combinations of familiar ideas. Another one is exploratory creativity, which is when we try to generate new outcomes within the boundaries or existing boundaries or rules. For example, trying to come up with novel ways of playing a given genre without breaking the rules of that genre. Another one is transformational creativity, when you truly break away from existing boundaries or rules to generate novel outcomes. Also, in the understanding of creativity, we have come up with many different frameworks. And when I say we, I mean authors throughout time. And the latest framework to understand creativity is composed of of 8 main P's, where half of them, four, are heavily based on human elements. For example, the public, which the audience, which to which the work is created; purpose, the for which the creativity is made for, or human motivation and intentionality; persons, the characteristics of people who are creative and who are conducting that creative process; and the actual process itself and the mental effort, the mental operations which are needed for that particular process, which in the case of music involved also skill and expertise. So as you can see, our current understanding of creativity and our current paradigm of creativity is still heavily influenced on the human element and the human intentionality and motivation and the human skill and expertise that are required to generate outputs which are both novel and valuable. However, creativity, as I'm trying to explain, is a process, and processes can be understood, deciphered, and therefore replicated. And that's what automation and artificial intelligence is now capable of doing. Now, I know there's a huge buzz in artificial intelligence in general, but it's very important for us to understand that this is not exactly a novel discussion. It actually draws back all the way into the 50s. And interestingly, in 56 was when John McCarthy, during an academic conference, for the first time used the term artificial intelligence. In that same year, Hiller and Isaacson completed the Iliac Suite, which is deemed to be the first computer music ever made. Fast forward a few decades, we have the groundbreaking work of Professor David Cope that created EMI, that stood for Experimental Music Intelligence, which is basically the automation of a process that could decompose compositions, identify commonalities, and then recombine them in familiar or unfamiliar ways to generate music. So, as he described at the time, was actually the process of pressing a button and seeing hours of music come out. Very interestingly, this year there was a documentary made about David Cope called The Opus Scope, in which there was a quote during the documentary that I found super interesting, where they mentioned it was possible to produce beautiful music, which meant nothing. Exactly. The process of creativity had been deconstructed, understood, and replicated for music. Fast forward a few decades, in the early 2010s, we saw the release of a series of different tools that would allow music composition, music production, songwriting in general, lyrics writing, all of these processes being automated. Um, Fast forward only a few years, and then we saw the release of a number of albums by Tara Southern, Skyge, Holly Hurden, and Yacht, all using artificial intelligence to some extent. And this year, very interestingly, the Beatles released their last official track, Now and Then, which I particularly really liked. And they used AI in the production process to isolate John Lennon's voice from a previous demo and then conclude the track. So when we mention artificial intelligence and music, it's very important for us to understand not as a fully autonomous organism which is generating music by itself, but I like to call it more a process of artificial co-creation because the human always has some level of input, regardless if it was how the Beatles use it or how some of the previous artists use it or how David Cope use it. So we should think of it as a scale in which along the scale, the human has more or less input. However, what do we actually think about artificial creativity? If we know that AI is now composing music, how do we actually respond to this? Well, this is one of the topics in which I research. A few years back, what we identified in a study, in a two-stage study, was that first of all, people had a fairly negative perception towards artificial intelligence in music. However, when we followed that up with experimentation, what we found was that there was no effect as long as people liked what they heard, which makes full sense because music is a stimuli that triggers our nervous system. And if we are responding in a positive way, our emotions are being triggered in a positive way, it's very hard for us to go against it. In another study which we conducted, what we identified was that the type of product played a role, and there was not actually much difference between music and other types of products when AI was applied in the production process. And very interestingly, there was no effect on emotional value, the knowledge or the awareness that AI had been used in the process. Also, for the last years, I've been conducting a project measuring the perceptions of music fans and measuring a number of different elements. And one of the things that what I measure is the perception of artificial intelligence um, being used in music. And what we see is a slow desensitization. And given that in the end of last year, with the breakthrough of ChatGPT really bursting the bubble of AI tools for the general audience, I would expect also a much higher desensitization. In other words, the higher the adoption rate of AI tools, the greater we should expect the acceptance of not only the tools themselves in the process, but how these outputs are being perceived. And that is why myself and many other colleagues have raised the importance of us changing our paradigm on creativity and trying to see creativity in a different light now, not exactly because we want to, and this is very important to state, not exactly because we want to, but because these tools are so groundbreaking and they change to such extent the way in which we understand creativity that we have to change the way in which we see it. And in this new creative paradigm, we should consider human and AI co-creation as a pivotal type of process that doesn't undermine the value of the output. And that's also why we need to reconsider the role of skill and expertise in creative processes. And that's something which is very difficult for us humans to accept because developing a skill and expertise is something that takes time, especially in the case of music and in mastering your instrument. And now imagine just seeing someone mastering a software and being able to generate outputs that are potentially as valuable as. In this case, we also need to broaden our minds for the creativity of non-creatives that would now be possible of generating creative outputs without necessarily that skill or expertise. And finally, also potentially considering the autonomous intentionality of algorithms. To conclude, what is the future like of artificial creativity? As anything that involves artificial intelligence, we should look at both sides of the coin. From one perspective, with a huge fascination. If you remember in the beginning, I was mentioning historical novelty. Um, it is so possible of reaching historical novelty, which not exactly is going to be positive, but we can reach it through unfamiliar combinations. It is very likely that we're going to reach new genres or sounds that were at the moment simply unthought of, but we will be able to reach them simply because of the scale in which AI can operate. So, regardless of those endless possibilities, we also should have a series of concerns. Concerns of ethical use of artificial intelligence, for example, for training without authorizations of composers. Fears of copyrights, of how do we deal with this abundance of AI generated music based on training of existing works of others. The truth is that at the moment, we have way more questions than we do answers. And we need way more research and way more time to understand all of the changes that are going on. So, for one perspective, yes, we should be highly excited and broadening our minds. From the other, we should be cautious. Thank you very much for the opportunity. It's been a pleasure talking to you. I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. And if you're interested in the topic, don't hesitate to contact me. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.